New and devastating poll numbers putting the president's job approval ratings at an all-time low. A new Quinnipiac University poll shows Biden's job approval is barely over 30%, with more than half of respondents disapproving of the current state of affairs. And with just over 6 months until the 2022 midterm elections, Democrats are fearing the worst. One strategist not holding back, saying November will be a, quote, biblical disaster. The last 48 hours certainly not helping their cause with the release of devastating reports on inflation and the economy. Those just adding to other concerns like rising crime rates and the surge at our southern border, which is only going to get worse. All of which are sure to be at the forefront of voters' minds. This is like a sinking Titanic, Pete, and nothing can help this administration recover. Not an ill-fated speech in Iowa where a bird intervenes, not a Supreme Court nominee, not the perception of being a wartime president, not even, hey, I'm not President Trump, vote for me. Nothing can help them. But what perplexes me, about 1 in 3 voters say, hey, I still like this Biden guy. About 10 out of 10 people I talk to say they don't. So I don't know who they polled, the liberal media, because I don't think it's 33%.
I agree. But sometimes you have to stop and just say, 33? I mean, that low this fast, alarm bells have to be going off. And the question is not whether it'll be biblical. It's which one. Is it a flood? Is it a drought? Is it a plague? Is it locust?
Which calamity?
I don't know which calamity it's going to be. And you know what? We can tick down the items, and we do often. Inflation, border, crime, illegal immigration, whatever you want to focus on. Ukraine, Afghanistan, we can go down the list. But it's also the cultural issues that they have allowed to bubble to the top, whether it's gender or critical race theory or even the way COVID has been politicized, that I think you can manage, if you're a Democrat, the fact that you're getting hit a little bit the pocketbook and rationalize that away. But if you feel like your party's lost sanity, and that's where the independent number's even lower, it's at 26%.
It's amazing.
You just say, the adults aren't in charge over there, and you can't undo that with a press release or a hashtag. So their backs are against the wall for all the right reasons. They got in bed with the crazy left, and now they're associated with it.
Yeah, and when you look at the breakdown, Harris, you mentioned 26% independents. Look at this. These are 4 key cohorts to winning an election. 26% approve independents, 26% of Hispanics approve, 37% of women, and just 21% of those 18 to 34. Democrats need these people.
All right, so, you say young people, do they vote, that sort of thing. But the performative value that Biden has tried to show is mainly to young people about the woke issues. So he needs them to at least not be an enemy. He needs to have friends that can say to the base, I'm the real deal. So he's got to perform for that younger group, even though they may not normally go to the polls in the same number as people who are above the age of 60. I mean, if you look statistically, that's true. So you talk about what gets you the reset for Biden. I asked a Democrat guest this last hour, and she immediately toggled to something else. I don't think they know. And you know what triggers voters? In-party confusion. In-party fighting. So what Democrat voters are seeing right now is a president that can't figure out which way to flex. Do I flex toward the woke? And then every time he does something, Jen Psaki at the White House lectern has to say in a press briefing, that's not what our policy is. Well, do I flex to the more moderate? She comes back out again. That's not our policy. I mean, they can't figure out what to do. And so what that does is you get guys like who live along the border who are Democrats going, Title 42, you're going to wipe that away? Now you've got a real problem inside the party because it's tied to national security, which, again, is a leader's #1 job. Just keep the people safe and crush the crime. Can you?
Right. I mean, it's very simple. But, Shannon, when you look at president and vice president, president's done 1 interview. Vice president's done 6 this year. There seems to be an inverse correlation. The more you put Kamala out there, the lower the Biden presidency seems to go. I don't know the answer, but I think being out there more than 1 interview probably would help some.
Well, I don't know. I think after the performance and the critiques of some of these interviews, they're probably like, okay, let's scale that back. Let's bring it in. Let's huddle up.
Back from 1.
When you look at overall numbers, because of course we think about the economy, that really is the thing that drives people when they're voting. Can I put food on the table and take care of my kids and gas in the car? Well, when you look at the Real Clear Politics average of how the country is moving in the right or wrong direction, it is upside down by more than 37 points. And that coupled with the fact that historically the party whose president is in power, that first midterm after his election is not a good one. They're facing all kinds of problems. The president is upside down. The economy, inflation, the border, as you mentioned, mentioned Harris, it is going to get exponentially worse in about a month. And with the Democrats controlling the White House, the House, and the Senate, they can't point to anybody else for those border problems when they kick up again like they're going to in a month. And the cultural stuff too, Pete, I don't know what they have to rally around at this point, because just about every indicator is super bad news for them.
Including in California. I mean, this would be like a Republican president not having Wyoming and Oklahoma, like red states. But in California, Vice President's at, I think it's 35%, 37%, right around there. President Biden at 47%, her home state.
Yeah, you guys, what does it say about someone when just 38% of residents of where you are from and where you spent the majority of your public service career, which is the Bay Area, have a favorable view of you, let alone the rest of California, right? 2/3 of registered voters believe the country's on the wrong track there in California. And get this, 65% of voters not affiliated with a political party think it's heading in the wrong trajectory. She has absolutely failed the people who know her best, and they are saying such. And you brought up the young voters earlier, and interestingly, they're in California, they have the worst marks of inflation against the president and vice president. So it is not lost on them, maybe because they're spending a lot on their avocado toast.
Well, they don't make a lot anyway, right? Because they're young, they're starting out in their careers. And so, yes, it is easier to get a job right now because we have so many of them. But if they get a job, get a second job, get a third job, and still can't afford anything, what does that tell them about the policies of this administration?
That's right. And I think that the line that stuck out to me so much from that poll, the UC Berkeley Los Angeles Times poll, is that it said the numbers capture an electorate deeply pessimistic about the future. And you know what? We're going to see their decisions as a result in November.
It was supposed to get better.